At 8:30 a.m. on June 6, 1944, Lieutenant General Omar Bradley stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser USS Augusta, staring through binoculars streaked with salt spray at what looked like a catastrophe unfolding in real time. Below him lay Omaha Beach, if it could still be called a beach at all. Bodies drifted in the surf, landing craft burned along the shoreline. Soldiers who had reached the sand lay pinned behind twisted steel obstacles, trapped under relentless German machine gun fire that had never let up since first light. Bradley had promised those men something very different. He had assured them that naval bombardment would smash the German defenses before a single American boot touched French soil. He had told them the enemy would be second-rate troops, demoralized, under strength, unready. Now, nearly 2,000 Americans were already dead or dying, and the general responsible for U.S. ground forces was weighing an unthinkable option: evacuation. Pull the survivors off Omaha, redirect incoming waves to Utah Beach or to the British sector at Gold. Except that the American assault had failed before it truly began. What Bradley could not see, what no one aboard the Augusta could know from 8 miles offshore, was that amid the chaos on that beach, a 51-year-old general with a weak heart and a walking cane was about to alter the course of the invasion. From the start, British leaders had doubted the Americans. Field Marshal Brooke, chief of the Imperial General Staff and the professional head of the British Army, kept a detailed wartime diary. In it, he recorded his unfiltered thoughts on strategy, leadership in the American allies whose arrival had saved Britain from near certain defeat. Brooke respected American industry. The factories of Detroit and Pittsburgh were producing tanks, aircraft, and ammunition at volumes Germany could never hope to match. But American soldiers were another matter. In his view, they lacked the combat seasoning earned through years of fighting in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. American generals, he believed, had not yet learned how deadly and resilient the German war machine truly was. This skepticism wasn't rooted in malice, it came from memory. The British had watched France collapse in 6 weeks. They had fled Dunkirk with their backs to the sea. They had lost Singapore, Greece, Crete, disasters born from underestimating an enemy that moved faster and struck harder than expected. Caution became doctrine. And the Americans, with their confidence, their abundance, and their soldiers who had never faced a full Wehrmacht division in open battle, seemed dangerously optimistic. Prime Minister Winston Churchill shared those concerns. As late as February 1944, just 4 months before D-Day, he was still questioning the entire operation. "Why are we doing this?" he demanded in meetings. He suggested alternatives: Norway, the Mediterranean, the Balkans, anywhere but a direct assault on the most heavily fortified coastline on Earth. The British preference was attrition, wear Germany down through bombing, peripheral campaigns, and by letting the Soviets bleed the Wehrmacht dry in the east. Only after German strength had been sufficiently eroded, they argued, should the Allies risk a cross-channel invasion. The Americans disagreed. General George C. Marshal, U.S. Army Chief of Staff, believed in concentration of force at the decisive point. Strike where it hurts most. End the war quickly. Stop the killing. This philosophical divide shaped every stage of invasion planning. The British wanted more time, more preparation, more certainty. The Americans wanted action. The deadlock was finally broken not in London or Washington, but in Tehran. In November 1943, Joseph Stalin joined Franklin Roosevelt in demanding a fixed invasion date. Churchill, outnumbered, reluctantly agreed. May 1944, later postponed to June due to landing craft shortages. Even as the date approached, doubts lingered. Would American troops hold under fire? Would American commanders adapt when plans unraveled? would young men from Iowa, Texas, and California have the discipline and courage to storm a fortified beach against veteran German defenders? June 6th would answer those questions. The relationship between British and American forces before D-Day was shaped by history, experience, and friction. British officers had been fighting since 1939. They had survived the fall of France, the Blitz, the long grind of North Africa. They had buried friends and entire units. They understood German professionalism the hard way. American officers, by contrast, entered the war in December 1941. Many had never fired a shot in anger until late 1942. Even veterans of Sicily and Italy were viewed as relatively green by British standards. This skepticism wasn't rooted in malice, it came from memory. The British had watched France collapse in 6 weeks. They had fled Dunkirk with their backs to the sea. They had lost Singapore, Greece, Crete. Disasters born from underestimating an enemy that moved faster and struck harder than expected. Caution became doctrine. And the Americans, with their confidence, their abundance, and their soldiers who had never faced a full Wehrmacht division in open battle, seemed dangerously optimistic. Bernard Montgomery embodied those contradictions. He respected Eisenhower. He also believed deeply that he understood ground warfare better than Eisenhower ever would. In his mind, Americans had potential but needed British guidance to unlock it. Bradley felt this acutely. Montgomery left me with the feeling that I was a poor country cousin he had to tolerate, he later wrote. Yet Montgomery also recognized something powerful in American soldiers. During tours of U.S. camps in England, he spoke to them directly, without notes. The troops responded enthusiastically. They cheered him in and cheered him out. These young men had crossed an ocean to liberate a continent they had never seen, and they believed in their mission with an intensity that unsettled more cynical British veterans. The question was whether belief would be enough when the bullets began to fly. At Omaha Beach, almost everything that could go wrong did. Intelligence estimated the beach was defended by a single regiment of the 716th Static Infantry Division. Older men, foreign conscripts, second-rate troops. What planners didn't know was the 352nd Infantry Division, younger, better equipped, led by Eastern Front veterans, had moved into the sector months earlier. Air and naval bombardment were supposed to pulverize German defenses. Instead, cloud cover caused bombers to release late. Their payloads fell inland, missing the beach entirely. Naval fire lasted just 40 minutes, far too brief. Rear Admiral John Hall had argued for hours of sustained fire. He was overruled. Then came the tanks. Of the 32 amphibious Shermans launched offshore, 27 sank in rough seas. Their crews drowned inside them. Landing craft burned along the shoreline. Soldiers who had reached the sand lay pinned behind twisted steel obstacles, trapped under relentless German machine gun fire that had never let up since first light. Then came Brigadier General Norman Cota, 51 years old, Assistant Division Commander of the 29th Infantry Division. Cota had opposed the daylight landing from the beginning. He believed only surprise could succeed. He was overruled. Now, standing amid the dead and wounded, he did not crawl. He walked upright through machine gun fire. He rallied stunned soldiers. He pointed towards the bluffs. He demanded movement. When he encountered pinned down Rangers and asked their unit, the reply came back, 5th Rangers. Well then, Cota shouted, "Rangers, lead the way." That moment became legend, not because of the words, but because of what followed. He ordered a Bangalore torpedo placed against the wire. When the first man through was killed, Cota went next. Men followed. Small groups began pushing inland, not according to plan, but because staying still meant death. The Navy returned, risking grounding destroyers just yards from shore. Guns fired until barrels overheated. Bunkers fell. The tide turned. By evening, Omaha was no longer a slaughterhouse.
It was a fragile beachhead, won at a terrible cost. At Utah Beach, leadership took a different form. Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., 56 years old, arthritis-ridden, heart-damaged, landed with the first wave, swept nearly 2,000 yards off course. He surveyed the beach and calmly said, "We'll start the war right here." He personally reconnoitered under fire, redirecting entire units. His presence steadied the men. He received the Medal of Honor. He died weeks later, never knowing. By nightfall, all Allied beaches held. British operations were methodical. American operations were chaotic. Doctrine collapsed in Omaha, but improvisation replaced it. Where British training emphasized adherence to plan, Americans adapted on the fly. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't textbook, it worked. British skepticism didn't vanish, but it changed. After Omaha, they no longer questioned whether Americans could fight. They questioned how they fought while acknowledging the results. Respect replaced doubt. The alliance forged that morning endured long after the war. It shaped victory in Europe and the world that followed. The beach had to be taken, and it was.